Make sure you click that subscribe button below and click the notification bell. That way you'll know exactly when the next episode will drop. Hello, everyone. It is with great pleasure that I am joined here today by Mr. Todd Anduze. We are in season 20 of the Business Infrastructure Podcast, the show where we talk about tips, tools, and strategies to help you cure those back office blues. And so Todd is the area director of the University of Georgia's SBDC. So again, remember that stands for Small Business Development Center, and there are many of them spread out across the U.S. Todd, welcome. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
And we actually met through Sean Palmer. Sean has also been a guest here on the podcast, and he was kind enough to introduce us to each other. Before we actually get into what you actually do as an area director, I noticed that you do have a very interesting background education-wise. So I was wondering if you could kind of take us down a trip down memory lane, if you wouldn't mind, Todd. But first, start off maybe by telling us, are you actually from Georgia? Are you a native Georgian?
So I was, my family's from Puerto Rico. I was born in Miami. I moved to Georgia when I was in high school. So I graduated from a Georgia high school. So yes.
Okay, awesome. Where about in Georgia?
Right outside Atlanta, you can get to, 20 minutes. So
okay, awesome. And so you graduate from high school near Atlanta, Georgia. You actually go to the school where you're now affiliated with, right? UGA, or was it University of West Georgia?
So yeah, University of West Georgia. Actually, it was a number of years before I actually went to school. Right out of high school, I went into the United States Navy during Desert Storm and served as a plane captain for the A-6 Intruder and FA-18. After that, I spent about 12 years in the mining industry. So I moved to Boston. I got recruited down to Georgia from Boston, and I spent 12 years in the mining industry. During that whole time, I was earning my first degree. So I did come back here, use the GI Bill to get my first degree, which is in management and accounting. And then I went back and got my master's degree in accounting.
Okay, so you have a total of 3 degrees then, right? And I know you're back in school. So, okay, 2 degrees in accounting. There's also a degree in psychology. How did that come about and why?
So we're really encouraged to pursue different aspects of business. And I'm a proponent of having a great team. And so when I was in the mining industry, they kind of gave me the entire process of hiring people. We had a huge turnover rate. We were hiring people that didn't last too long. And in the mining industry, it took $14,000 to train you before you could set foot in a mine. So you had to go through the first aid, the safety, the MSHA training. And so if somebody didn't last but a week, that was just $14,000 that you threw out. So they kind of gave it to me to start hiring people. So I extended that process. I started hiring some really good people. And I took that and I put it in the back of my mind as I'm developing my skills through the University of Georgia. That leadership aspect, that employee empowerment, we started doing some really big programs with Home Depot, with Walmart, a couple other ones that we were working with for their executive development, their leadership training, not management, leadership. And I started realizing that this is really understanding humans, and this is really understanding personalities and understanding generations. And so it's psychology. So I actually went back and I started taking a couple classes before I went and got my degree in psychology. And then I'm working on my graduate level psychology degree right now. So
that will be degree number 4.
Yes.
And I can imagine also, Todd, with your experiences being in the Navy, that also maybe served as foundation for that understanding humans aspect that you're talking about, and what it takes for people to come together and go out on a mission and accomplish that mission.
Absolutely. I have the distinct, opportunity to say that I have trained with both SEAL Team 1 and SEAL Team 4.
Wow.
And that is what the pinnacle of what a team, in my opinion, should be. I mean, everybody knows exactly everybody's duties. Everybody's going in the same direction. So then when I got out, I worked in the mining industry, and that was everything what a team should never be. I mean, it was completely disoriented. It was completely everybody doing their own thing. In fact, I had people walk off the job. So I've got that range of what a team should never be and what a team should absolutely be, and I can kind of associate that. And that actually pushed me down that path of going, you know what, everything revolves around that team. Everything revolves around, you know, those types of understanding from the different members. And it's all about hiring the right team and surrounding yourself with people that want you to be just successful. So when you're talking about a business, big, small, whatever you want to look at, if you don't have the right team in place and you don't surround yourself with people that want you to be successful, then you're going to have a hard time. Now, I'm not saying that people don't, they can't be successful with having, you know, by themselves or not having a great team. It's just, it is a struggle. And I've seen it a struggle, especially if you want to expand.
Absolutely. I'm curious, when you were working in the mining industry, were you actually going inside of the mines?
I have been in mines, yes. I remember.
Really? What
Yes,
kind?
I've been in holes. A lot of it was surface mining. So yeah, it was big holes in the ground, but there's always tunnels that you have to climb through and go into and dig out, sweep out, wash out. I mean, we had one where I was definitely underground for a long time. The ceiling of the mine was here, and I was on my back washing out a tunnel and it took me about a month to do that. So I get in there.
Oh my God, I can't imagine. How many hours at a time? This is me being curious.
No
How many hours at a time would you typically be underground?
So it wasn't a whole lot of the day. The mining industry, it depends. Like if it was coal mining, they're always in the ground, but that's a different type of mining, different types of machines. Not saying I haven't been in there. It's just that wasn't what my specialty was. My specialty was really hard material like granite, not really softer material like talc or limestone. It was really extremely hard material that you went from the surface down.
So were you working in the I'm sorry, you actually already answered that. You were working in the HR space within the mining industry. So
no, I was working in the front lines. Yeah, I was actually when I got out, I was working I actually ran a machine for a little while. I welded, I ran the plant. When I was in Boston, it was a little bit different because I went up there because of a friend actually bought a surface mine up there and needed my help. So that's kind of got me into that industry. And then when I learned those skills, I got recruited down here to Georgia, and I decided to do that because my family was here, and I came back. But yeah, no, I was front line before I made it up to. I was hired for a lead, but that's not what they needed at the time. They needed somebody to actually do the job, and the people weren't actually trained. So when I was running the plant, I worked my way up to assistant plant manager through and that whole time I was going to get my degrees. So I got my first degree. I kind of went a push for upper management, but that was during the 08, 07, 08 when the economy collapsed and construction was in the hole. So I actually jumped out of there, got a great severance package, was able to complete my master's degree, was able to start working at a CPA firm and learning accounting and really learning the language of business. And that's what I kind of thought that path was going to go, because I mean, being behind a desk after being, in the mess for a long time, I love this job. I love being behind a desk. I was telling somebody the other day, it was like 10 degrees outside and I was warm. So I love it. And it took me a while to get there. And I think that my skills now are represented a little bit better in this position, because when this director position opened up, it was definitely something I thought I could do. Not saying that I couldn't do the accounting. It's just that people paid me to do their taxes, paid me to do the bookkeeping, and they would come in and I'd be like, if you do this, if you budget, if you lean up your company, you're hemorrhaging money here. If you do that, you would be better. You'd be more profitable, or you could make a little bit more money in your pocket. Some people loved it. Some people was like, hey, I just want to make the donuts. And I'm like, okay, do that. And I'm fine. And I was very happy within that industry. I just knew that I could make a difference. I've always been in the kind of service industry. You know, I've always been just really wanting to assist people, because when we think about it, this is just a job and it shouldn't really define you. What defines me more is assisting people, my family, and you know, making it easy.
And speaking of assisting people, Todd, I know that is the cornerstone of the work that you are doing over at the SBDC. SBDC, excuse me. Can we start to transition into that a little bit more? Can you tell us more about what you're doing as an area director at the SBDC, and specifically kind of play up what you guys are doing over there at the University of Georgia's SBDC?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are one of 18 offices. I'm what's called a host institution office. So I have like a satellite office at a different university. So there's like 8 of us, around the state that are in specific institutions. So I report to the University of Georgia, but I also report to the University of West Georgia. What we are in every state, this is what Sean and I actually had a conversation about this. The SBDC is a little bit different in every state. It's a little bit tweaked. So us being pretty much from the University of Georgia Public Service and Outreach, we are business consultants. Our job is to consult with businesses. Our job is to sit one-on-one with people and help them figure out their problems, their pain points. Business, we want to educate them in business. We don't charge for our services. We're 100% no charge. I'm not going to sell you anything. I'm not going to sell your information. Everything is confidential. And we can bounce people around depending on their needs. So I always tell my clients that they're dictating the actual conversation or the consultation. They can come in and go, hey, I want to make $1 million. Hey, I need marketing. And then we'll look at their business. We will look at how they're operating. We'll give them some recommendations. But we're not going to go in and work and run their business. I'm not going to be their bookkeeper. I'm not doing their taxes or any legal advice. I had a client ask me, he asked me to fire somebody one day. And I said, I really can't do that. You know, I can recommend some changes. And I will recommend some changes, but I'm also not a big proponent of firing people. In my opinion, if you fire somebody, that means that you hired somebody that shouldn't have been hired. Now, there's always going to be somebody that's going to snow you. I've been snowed myself, and somebody got through the interview process. But if they're sitting there saying they're firing people, a lot of times I'm going to go back and look at if they're hiring. Do they know what they want? Do they know what they don't want? You know, do they have a great job description? Are they asking the right questions? Are you you've heard of good fit employee? That is huge, because if you've got a team and you're adding someone to the team, then it shouldn't be your decision. It should be everybody's decision as a group. You should be empowering them. You should be challenging them. You should be understanding that, hey, I just need this job for a week before I go, somewhere else. If you don't know that, or you don't know what their drive is, or they're important, then that's a problem. And I ask that, if somebody's working for just money, and you know that, then you know that if somebody comes with $1 more, they're out of here. So you need to know that. If you don't know that and they leave, they're like, I don't know why they left. I thought they were happy. Well, that wasn't what their goal was. That wasn't what they were striving for. So understanding that, and before, then you hire the right people, and you hire the people that are going to be there to support your team, especially with small business owners, entrepreneurs in themselves. They hire a lot of friends and family. That's
right.
That's right. Which is not a bad thing. But if you don't have a job description for mom when she comes in, it's going to be a problem. If you don't have you don't understand that your grandson wants to get off at 3:00 every Friday night to go hit the clubs and party, then he's going to be calling in sick. He's not going to be dependable because you're not giving them what they want. And it's not as simple as that, but it is a good basis for understanding, team building and having the right people on your side.
Todd, one of the things, as I'm listening to you talking about team building and the importance of recruiting the right people, having those job descriptions, I'm also hearing the rumblings of an onboarding process, I would imagine, having a very good onboarding process. And we're going to get into all of that. So it's reminding me of what we actually specialize here at Equilibria, which is business infrastructure. And what we typically find is that it's easier to have a conversation about business infrastructure when you're talking about companies that are growing fast. And when they're growing fast, that's when they realize we need more people. But you have to make sure that people know what to do, how to do it, so forth and so on. And for those who might be listening or watching for the first time, business infrastructure is simply a system for how you link your people, your processes, and your tools and technologies so that your company doesn't just grow, but it can actually scale in a profitable, repeatable, and sustainable way. So with that being said, Todd, let's circle back to that people element of business infrastructure, because I know that's what that's actually an area of expertise or one of your specialties among many. I know that you spend quite a bit of time focusing on team building when you are advising or consulting with the small businesses that come into your office. Can you kind of give us an idea of some of the things that you do with these small businesses, particularly as it relates to team building? And even if you want to get into some things that you recommend for recruiting, interviewing, and ultimately hiring the right people and making sure it's that right fit.
That's a huge question.
I know. I'm sorry. We can break it down.
Yeah, I mean, it's important. I mean, they're all important. The people, the processes, the technology and tools. I mean, it's all important. So if somebody was to come in and meet me for the first time, we're going to kind of do like a 360 health check, kind of make sure all the actual processes are in place. Because you're right, the tools need to be there, the process need to be there. And if we're looking to build people, we look at that whole thing. We look at, we look at what they need, but really we look at the owners and what they need. And if they're even the ones that are making the decisions. Once you start getting into these bigger companies, we're able to go up to 500 employees and 50 million in annual revenue as far as the size of a company. So if we're able to go that high, you're talking about multiple employees, and one person can really mess up a team, man. One person can really hurt it. So we like to look at everything. We like to look at job descriptions. We like to look at hiring practices, but we also like to look back and say, what hasn't worked for you in the past? Who have you hired? What were some of those questions? I like to get people on a personal level. You definitely don't want to go outside that box, but everybody does these standard questions, and it's really interesting to see that if you ask them a question, they're going to tell you what you want to hear. If you ask somebody, hey, what's your biggest weakness? Which everybody asks, everybody asks. They go, oh, I care too much, or I work too hard, or come on now. I mean, that's I love when they do that, because I'm like, that's great. I love that. Sounds more like a positive. Why don't you think a little bit more and tell me what you really think your weakness is? And you get them to think about it, and you get them to really look at scenario aspects, and you don't give them yes or no questions, or even questions. Like, I'm on a bunch of different committees, and we do have those questions, but after the first 5-minute interview, I'm already thinking of what scenario I can talk to them about, specifically from how they're responding to some of these basic questions. So that's just to get past and it's not always a plus or minus, because people are nervous in interviews. They want to tell you the best. So prolong that. Have people that you saw something in. Maybe they answered one question good. They don't have to answer every question good. Let's bring them back in and meet them and talk to them, and maybe do a day in the life, or take them to dinner. See what they're, see what that person is, because after a few interviews, they're going to let their guard down. They're not going to be answering things the way you want to hear. They're going to be answering things because they're comfortable, especially if they've already figured they're past the nervous part. So you do that, but then you ask the easy questions. What drives you? What are your goals? What are your goals of yourself? And they'll tell you some of the things. They'll say that, oh, my goals are to be home every night for my family. That's my goal. I want to be home with my kids. Now, I did say I was in Desert Storm, so that was a little while ago. I have a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old daughter and son.
Mm.
So this job was absolutely perfect because it allows me to come home every night. Now, my job is in the mining industry. They were paying very, very well. But I remember one day coming in and staying 22 hours in that place. And
Wow.
that was when I was young, and that's when I could do it. And I had different goals. I had goals of buying a house. I had goals of getting my degree. I didn't have a wife. I didn't have kids. So that was what I was able to do. And now that I've transitioned into this, that is important to me. If you're hiring somebody, you don't know what their drive is, then you'll be surprised when they go, "Hey, I gotta go. My kid's in the hospital, or my kid's got this. I've got to go." And if you go, "No, you can't do that," guess what? They're already thinking of another place to work.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so once people start to hire others,
Yep.
again, their teams are they recognize they have to build their teams. They're hiring, they're recruiting, interviewing, ultimately making these job offers to people. From a team building perspective, Todd, when do people usually bring you in to consult with them, specifically as it relates to team building? Or is it something that you kind of pick up on as you're talking to some of your different small business clients?
Well, it depends. I mean, it definitely depends. A lot of the people I'm consulting with, that's down the road. But if I've had some people that specifically call me to come in and evaluate their processes. I do a lot of OSHA interpretations, inspections and stuff. I'm actually the only one in the state that does it for our organization. So I travel around, and I look at their process. I look at their safety program. I look at if they care about their employees. Are they empowering them? Are they giving them ways to be successful? Are they encouraging them to better themselves? I mean, a lot of this stuff is what we want our businesses to give us. Why aren't we giving that to our clients and our business? So I'll go in and we'll talk about it. And you said an onboarding aspect, it's huge, but also it's just like a business plan. You can have a process and procedures in place, but if you're not evaluating that and using that on a continuous basis, then it doesn't mean anything. A business plan, if you put it together and you put it on a bookshelf and you never touch it, it doesn't mean anything. I used to say, especially in operations, I used to say, "Hey, run it till it breaks. Run it till it breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out why it breaks. Fix that break, and then run it till it breaks again." And so you get to where you keep these bottlenecks, and you start seeing the bottlenecks in both processes, procedures, tools, people, whatever. And you evaluate their team, and you say, okay, everybody is on a list. Everything is on a list. Every machine is on a list. Every process is on a list. Of course, the small business entrepreneur, they're usually at the top of the list. And if I'm their consultant, I'm right under that. But you're evaluating the weakest link, what that means. And if it means you need to buy a new piece of equipment, guess what? You buy a new piece of equipment. If you need a new tool, you get a new tool. If you need to hire somebody else, then you don't hire them for the bottom of the team. You hire them for the middle of the team. You hire and you're always continuously bringing in better people. So that then, and I hate to say this, but at the end of the day, the person that you have to let go is a superstar, because you don't have the budget, or you don't have the means, or there's some circumstances. You don't get rid of people that don't matter. You want to have somebody that you go, "Oh my gosh, I've got to make a change." What does that consist of? And granted, that doesn't happen a lot, but I will tell you, the hardest person I've ever had to let go was somebody that I worked with for about 4 years. I worked him into a good position. He was having some issues at first, but we didn't just get rid of him. We found out that, hey, he was taking care of his grandkids, and his grandkids had to go to school every day. So he was being late every day for a good reason. But I talked to him about it, and I didn't just reprimand him and get rid of him. I talked to him about them. I worked them up. I trained him on different machines. And at the end of the day, I actually had to let him go, especially during the recession. And that hurt worse than anything. But I was honest with him. I said, look, you've been doing a great job. This has nothing to do with your performance. We just don't have the budget for this position anymore. I have to let you go. And it was a good conversation, and we talked about it. And I said, let me know how I can help you, because I care. And he's part of my team. And he wasn't just somebody that I fired and threw out the door. He was somebody that, when I got an opportunity, I got him another job at another place because it came up. But that's kind of what we want, right? That's kind of we want that. We want that understanding, and we want that opportunity to develop. But he was a great hire. He was a great performer, and he was just the weakest link at the time.
It sounds like, Todd, also what I'm getting from listening to you is communication and transparency.
Absolutely.
And it sounds so simple, right? But you're right. I think oftentimes I think too and it depends on the personality type, but for a lot of founders or owners of small businesses, we kind of, we can become unapproachable, and we kind of cut off those lines of communication. But what I'm hearing from you is definitely keeping those lines of communication open. And a big part of that is having that level of transparency with the people that you're working with.
Yep, and definitely transparency is a great word, because it could be a double-edged sword, can it?
I was just about to say, like, are there limits to how transparent you want to be?
There is, and that's up to the individual. I have been known to not really have a filter. I'm going to tell you, because I want you to know, and I want I want them to not have a surprise. So think about employee evaluations. I mean, employee evaluations, if there's any surprises on that, then that's the manager's fault. And I use manager and leader completely different, because manager is managing those processes, those people. They're managing. A leader is somebody that's inspiring somebody. So you can be a manager and a leader, but you can also be a manager and not a leader, and a leader and not a manager. Because I've seen people at the bottom rung of the chain of command be way better leaders than people that are up there. I knew this small business owner that I mean, the worst thing he could do was come into the office. He disrupted everything. He was like a whirlwind. He'd come in and mess everybody up in their processes. Take a 3-hour lunch, bring people in to down onto the safety floor, and everybody had to be real careful. I said, "Hey man, stay in your office. You're messing them up."
like the Tasmanian devil. I'm thinking about that cartoon with the Tasmanian devil.
Yeah, let's find where you're helpful. Let's find where you're beneficial, because that ain't it. You hired him to be a good, to be the manager, to be the guy. Let him do it. Let her do it. Don't mess them up, because they want to impress you. They want to do exactly what you want to do, but you got to be careful. So yeah, I love sitting people down and just kind of looking at that. And I'll sit down and just watch, we'll look at their stuff. But when I talk about a team, that is not just employees. That's vendors, that's CPAs, that's people like you. That's a team of professional consultants, vendors, CPAs, attorneys. Of course, attorneys are interesting to me, but we won't get into that. But it's developing people that want you to be successful, and we'll evaluate that. I was evaluating, and I do evaluate CPA firms a lot, because I was part of that industry for a while. And I remember one of my favorite CPAs. I mean, he's one of the smartest people that I've worked with. One of my clients, they were working out, and it was at a Gold's Gym or something, and the client was on a treadmill, and my buddy CPA was on the treadmill, and they started talking and blah, blah, blah. And of course they started asking business questions, and the client started asking them. Well, then the next day, the CPA actually billed him for the time. Now,
Oh,
it seems crazy, right? But if he gave him legal advice, tax advice, then he is liable. So if he didn't bill him, then he could open himself up for some liability. So in my opinion, he didn't do anything wrong. What I thought would be that he should have had that transparency, that he should have said, hey, look, I can answer that question here. You can call me later and I can, but if I answer it, I'm legally liable to bill you. And I just want you to know. So he didn't disclose that. It was kind of done in the engagement letter to begin with, but you know, transparency, communication is huge, because there's two people that really didn't communicate well, did they?
Absolutely. And I know we have to start wrapping up here, Todd, but I do have a really quick question, because I'd like to get your feedback on this. This is a conversation I had with someone a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about whether it kind of falls in line with what we're talking about with team building, communication, transparency. How much do you share? We were talking very specifically about whether or not to share your company's profitability with your employees. And this person was of the opinion that absolutely not. Do not. It can backfire on you. You can tell them the revenue that your company has made, but when you start talking about profitability, then your employees will start asking, well, where's my cut? I'm looking for my bonus. I'm going to leave if I don't get it. What are your thoughts on that, Todd?
So that's a great question. I could talk about this for days, but you got to remember what profit means. Profit is revenue minus all the costs. So you're talking about depreciation, which is not, it doesn't have anything to do with cash. So that profit itself doesn't have anything to do with your bank account. So if they don't understand that the profit at the end of the day, if you looked at my profit sheets when I was doing taxes, my job was what? To get their tax liability as low as possible, right? So their net income or their profit themselves may not be what they think it is, because you got all these factors going in. So do I think you should show that information to your man? I don't know if I would do that, because they don't understand it to begin with. And that's what they'll come back with. Hey, we want our cut. Well, that's not the cut that's at the end. And then if you're talking about all these loans that you've got to pay off, or you've got all these different things that the company might be, that margin may be a lot lower than they think it is, or that they even understand. That'd be like somebody saying, yeah, I want to see your S corporation tax return. Well, here you go. You don't understand it anyways. There you go. You don't understand it. So there's no real reason to see it, because you don't understand it. Same with that. So I would say educating your employees, if that's something that is their need, if they need that and you're not providing that, then it's going to create that communication issue. It's going to create that. So you could say, hey, look, I do want to show you some things, or we can talk about that, but hey, let's break it down. And then you can show them a part of it, or a little smidget of it, or just the profit margin above the line, or something like that, that doesn't have all that other stuff in it. Say, look, this does not necessarily mean cash.
Got it. Great point. So thank you for that. Now, as we start to wrap up here, Todd, I'm sure there are people who are probably watching, listening, and they're wondering, well, how can I follow Todd, or where's the best place that they can connect with you just to learn more about, I know you're posting things on LinkedIn, for example, specific to human behavior, psychology, team building, all of these amazing things that you've been talking about. What's the best place for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. My opinion, well, because I kind of go around state, and I can consult with people outside the state. There's a lot of little things, but I can't spend a lot of time. It depends on where you're at. I want people to be successful, but in my opinion, I would go to www.georgia, spelled out GEORGIA SBDC. SBDC.org. So www.georgiasbdc.org. It will show everybody that works for the SBDC in Georgia where you can get in touch with us. If you'd like to get in touch with me, I have no problem with my email. Granted, it's TANDUZE at georgiasbdc.org. So I can send you that information, and you can check our. We do a lot of webinars, so that if you're national, you can definitely look at some of our webinars. We have a Start Smart coming up that's going to be online, so it's actually a pretty good program. And we do charge for our programs. They're a little bit because it's time and effort, and so those are our signature programs. We do have a lot of training, but we don't want to make money. We just want to make sure that we have our costs covered. So
Absolutely.
they can get in touch with me there. My email, I usually don't give out my phone number because I don't answer the phone.
Yeah. And we always don't encourage people to share their email addresses either, because we don't want you to get spammed. So, but we will definitely add the website to the show notes for this episode.
Absolutely.
And also a link to the Start Smart program. Speaking of Start Smart, are there any other resources, Todd, that you can share? Maybe certain books that you might recommend?
So the books are interesting. I always recommend something that fits your mindset at the time. If it's team building, do something with team building. If it's learning, profit and loss statements, definitely do something in financials. There's a bunch of different books. It depends on where you're at. I've read the E-Myth. I've read financial literacy. I'm actually looking at doing some emotional intelligence for team building, and that's really where we're at. And it's important. It's important because, as I said, you want to come to work, and you want your employees to want to come to work, and you want them to give their best. And a happy employee, or somebody that really thinks their owners care about them, and they're going to give so much more. They're going to bend over backwards for you, and it's just, there's so much more than just, people say there are assets, and they usually just say that, but they really are, because they're going to make or break you all day long. And that's with anything. How many times have you seen somebody ruin a company out at a bar and go, yeah, I wouldn't work there. I'm looking for something else. You're a mad employee at the bar is the worst thing you could have, or at a community event or something. It's the worst thing you can have.
Yeah. And speaking of which, as we officially close out, you've imparted so many words of wisdom with us throughout this entire interview. It's so appreciated, Todd. But any parting words of advice, especially for those who are, again, they're actively building or expanding their teams, and they just want to make sure that the dynamics of those teams are never compromised in such a way that they have someone at the bar or at the baseball game talking badly, because bad news always travels faster than good news, as we know.
Yeah. I mean, just that communication aspect, and it doesn't have to be, depending on how big your company is, it doesn't have to be the owner, but if the first line supervisor or the manager understands their team and understands their employees and talks to them, then they know if they're not happy. And then they should take it upon themselves to say, well, is there something I can do? Now, as I said, there's not always something you can do, but is there something I can do to engage this person, to, help empower them, to keep them from being unhappy? And to tell you the truth, just that caring, I mean, it can go up to the top, but it doesn't necessarily have to, but just that caring says a lot. And it really says, okay, you know what? I had a bad day, but at least they're not hammering me on top of my bad day. And so, everybody's dealing with you've heard this before. Everybody's dealing with something you have no idea they're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Open that up and see what the problem is, especially with somebody that's not happy.
And on that note, Todd, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. I appreciate you so much for taking time. I know how busy you are, and we will definitely make sure that this gets promoted and spread to the masses. And please make sure you get in touch with Todd. Again, everyone, we'll have links to all of these resources that Todd has shared with us at businessinfrastructure.tv. Todd, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Be sure to click the link in the description box below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell so that you'll know when our next episode drops. Until then, keep operating smoothly.